All right, guys, welcome back to the channel. Follow up JT Thompkins, Jordan Thompkins disqualification from the St. Lawrence River. You guys will remember on August 16th, Bassmaster published on their official website that Thompkins had been disqualified. And now some other things have come to the light. If you go back and you listen to the video I've done, and a couple other people have done some videos too on this after talking to a lot of people, a lot of anglers. This one is kind of like gone from both sides of the sibling spectrum in terms of Bassmaster and MLF. It's not too often that a controversy or a disqualification stems from both sides of the major professional tours in the country. But this one certainly has, and this one still has an incredible amount of oddities to it. I will say that. It just doesn't make any sense. And true to form, you know, MLF has a history of ignoring things and wanting things to just go away. Like, but the problem is when something happens in August or September, there's no events really after that for a lot of the major tours like Bassmaster, like Bass Elite Series, and other than the Opens for Bass, and then MLF for their other circuits. And so it lingers. It's not like, oh, there's another event in 3 weeks. We're on to the next event. We're on to the next event. We all know that none of these professional bass fishing series handle controversy well. They don't. I don't know why that is. But seemingly and glaringly, when you look at professional bass fishing compared to other major professional sports in America, it just seems like they do not handle controversy well, whether it be PR or whether it be from an organizational, I don't know why that is, in a sense. It could be that employee-employer 1099 whole thing, like as opposed to contracts, like say baseball players, football players, soccer players, all that, all they have. You know what I mean? Like, and they just perceive the anglers as being different, meaning they don't have to really do all that much because they're really not answering to anybody, really, other than their sponsors that have been kind of in bed with them for a long time. So it's kind of like, it really makes, there's no media that really holds their feet to the fire in these controversies. And this one, man, this one's absolute crazy. I said this in a video right after this happened that this was not good. Okay? And there's a lot of other reasons, to that, whether it be the rookie class for Bass, their success this year. But as far as, like, Jordan Thompkins goes, right? Like, he got disqualified. Let me just read you. This is what all Bass said. This is all that Bass said, okay, on August 16th, 2024, after notifying everybody. Elite Series angler JT Thompkins has been disqualified from the Humminbird Bassmaster Elite Series on the St. Lawrence River for failure to pass a truth verification examination. As a result, Thompkins will receive 0 points towards Progressive Bassmaster Angler of the Year and Dakota Lithium Elite Series Rookie of the Year standings. The truth verification exam was administered during the event Friday, and Thompkins failed to pass the exam sections that pertain to Rule C3, II, that's 2, and Rule C3, XIV. Okay? A lot of rules in Bassmaster. Rule 3, i.e. states that cannot gather waypoints or specific fishing locations, i.e. creek, river, area of lake, etc., from any source that is not publicly available. Okay. The other rule 3 states that during competition days, anglers may not log onto websites or participate in social media with the intent of gaining competitive advantage. So, based on the truth verification test, notice again, as I said before, Bass has gone away from using the polygraph, okay? Ask yourself why. Because polygraphs aren't reputable, right? We all know that. We all know that they are not, like they're, you know what I mean? Like they're not reliable. Like this happens time and time again. And so when you're basing your disqualification solely on a truth verification test that no one really knows what the hell B.A.S.S is talking about. What is this test? What is it? How's it administered? When's it administered? How many questions are asked in this test? Is it a standardized test? Is it uniform across the series for all events that the same test is administered to all anglers? Do they change up the test? Has it come down that multiple anglers are truth verified multiple times so they know the questions of the test? Okay? I mean, growing up, guys, how many people gave you the questions? Okay, now I'm sure that there are presidential candidates that are getting questions before the debate. But anyway, I digress. But how many people gave you the test before you had to go in there and take the test day? Right? Right? Okay, I'm just saying, no one knows. There's no transparency here. Okay? And at the reality of what we know now, in the mid-September now, is the only thing that B.A.S.S has told its fan base in terms of the disqualification rationale was he missed 2 questions on the truth verification test, therefore he's disqualified. That's all they revealed to the B.A.S.S community. Okay? Now we learned afterward, okay, that an angler in the B.A.S.S Elite Series reported J.T. Thompkins as gaining an unfair advantage, okay, potentially being provided waypoints or fishing locations for the St. Lawrence River event, okay? Said angler in B.A.S.S, who should be investigated, by the way, after what I'm going to talk about right now, because this angler, and I'm not going to disparage the angler's name because B.A.S.S hasn't formally released his name, okay? Formally, all right? There's plenty of windows out there, plenty of stuff out there, you can go ahead and find out who it is, but I'm not going to play that game, okay? You leave yourself open to a wide foray of things these days, okay, on YouTube and stuff with defamation and all that stuff. But a B.A.S.S Elite angler went to B.A.S.S Elite tournament director, okay, brought this to B.A.S.'s attention, all right? He reportedly got the information that J.T. Thompkins was provided waypoints and fishing locations from a cameraman at Major League Fishing, okay? Said cameraman was the cameraman in the boat for a Bass Pro Tour angler. Again, you can easily find out that Bass Pro Tour angler's name if you would like, simply by watching other people's videos who want to talk about that. But that angler in the Bass Pro Tour has walked everything back. Okay? So all the rumors that were said that he saw, he knew that this cameraman, he saw this cameraman's phone. Okay? He told the angler in the B.A.S.S Elite Series that he saw J.T. Thompkins' name in the phone from the cameraman, and the cameraman was talking about sending waypoints to not only B.A.S.S Elite anglers, but also Toyota Series anglers, because there was going to be another event on the St. Lawrence River in Major League Fishing. Okay? Seems like that's kind of an issue, right? That would be an issue, right? Apparently not for MLF. Okay? So let's talk a little bit about J.T. Thompkins, okay? Or Jordan Thompkins, okay? 14 top 20s, 19 top 30s. He's earned over $293,000 since coming into B.A.S.S. Okay, I think he won about $40,000 or $45,000 on the Toyota Series and BFLs and MLF from like 2018 to 2019, I think, or 20. Okay, he had an MLF Toyota Series win, I believe, on Harris Chain in Florida. He also followed that up with a 2, finishing second on the Harris Chain this year in the B.A.S.S Elite Series. Okay? So, again, he's a Northern Open winner on the Potomac, in the Upper Bay. And he's an Open, finished 15th at the James River in your Open. So if you're kind of trying to figure out, like, who is this rookie? what's going on with this rookie? Like, whatever. The guy absolutely crushes it, okay? He has worked it. Yes, he's a young cat from Myrtle Beach, South Carolina, okay? But in 2024, his rookie year on the Bass Elite Series, okay, JT finished 30th at Toledo Bend, 13th at Lake Fork, 2nd at Harris Chain, 3rd at Murray, 31st at Wheeler, 8th at Smith Lake, 17th at Lake Champlain. Now, I say that he's a rookie. Now, where do you think he would be sitting going into the St. Lawrence River in August after finishing 17th on Lake Champlain in the Rookie of the Year standings, or even the Angler of the Year standings? He'd be in the top 15, okay? Going into the last event of a season, right? So you can imagine, okay, what's going down. Last event of the season, people are jockeying. We already know. You've watched tons of videos about what happened on day 3 at the St. Lawrence River with all the Johnston boys' nonsense and stupidity, okay? It just is. They get away with it. Rookies can't get away with it, okay? But they can get away with it. People are be apologists for them, that they own spots on the St. Lawrence River that nobody else can fish. I don't know what world those people are living in, but they clearly have never fished bass events or tournaments locally or whatever. There's a reason why there is a launch order, right? Okay, like, it's not like you just get a spot, it's yours forever, and you can just go to it and fish it every time the event comes to town. That's not how it works, okay? So after day 1 and day 2, JT, okay, was fishing that same spot as Robert G. Was fishing that same spot as Trey McKinney. Was fishing that same spot before the whole Johnston roll-up deal happened, okay, on day 3. And I've covered that in videos. You guys, I got no truck with the Johnston boys. They are who they are. But, you know, you had your ass handed to you on the first day, 2 days by the rookies. You're out of the top 30 on day 3, and you want to announce to the world that, like, you feel like you can go back to where the guys have been fishing for 2 days and you know, drop your lure in the water and it's your spot and it's all good. Okay, good for you. But your Angler of the Year deserves an asterisk. It does. And the reason why it deserves an asterisk is JT was ahead of you. Okay? So JT gets bumped. He gets disqualified, okay, based on this in the middle of the St. Lawrence River event. Okay? Now, how did that disqualification impact everything? Well, it dropped JT to 15th in the Angler of the Year standings. And it dropped him to 6th in the Rookie of the Year standings because he got DQ'd. He lost 0. His points were zeroed out. He ended up finishing, okay, with a zeroed St. Lawrence event. He ended up finishing with 634 points in the Angler and the Rookie of the Year series race. He was just 100 points behind Trey McKinney for Rookie of the Year. 100 points. No. Okay? And he finished 15th in the Angler of the Year. Who's to say if JT, this didn't happen, and it shouldn't have happened. Okay? And Bass knows, by the way. Bass knows that this should not have happened. Bass knows that it has handled this egregiously. They know it. Okay? They're not going to go public with that, but they know it. Okay? And if you followed along the journey of this issue, it all stems back to the info rule, right? And what did Bass just do with the info rule? They just reversed their info rule. Remember, the Bassmaster Open anglers from 2023 were allowed to gather information until the end of their season last year. Their Open's going on right now. Would have had the same problem again, right? Okay, so Bass tried to get ahead of it and around it and just make it so everybody, not just the open anglers, but also the elite anglers could get information for 2025 events until January 1st. Well, it didn't take long for Bass to do a complete 180 and freaking come back and say, oh, no, we're going to go back to what it was before. Okay? Because of all the pushback. And yet every single angler from Gerald Swindle to all these elite guys that have been on the elites for a while want to have us all believe that they don't have any power and that Bass doesn't listen to them and that it's not them, it's not them, it's not them. Yet all of a sudden, out of nowhere, Bass just flips a 180. Okay? So the info rule comes into play for the JT Thompkins initial truth verification test because JT probably legally got information in 2023, okay, like everybody else who was an open angler, okay, probably got stuff, right? Probably looked on websites, probably did stuff like, oh, that's the schedule next year, because you were allowed to do that. And then when you get truth certified on a test, of course, it dings. And people want to call him a cheater. Well, how did he cheat? If he tripped the polygraph, truth verification test, based on knowledge he gained in 2023 when it was legal for Bassmaster open anglers to gather information, he's not a cheater. Okay? Now, if he got information from the cameraman, and that is what tripped the polygraph, truth verification test, then he is a cheater, right? Can we agree? Okay. Well, here's the problem with that. Is MLF has done its investigation. Now, it is not probably not going to release anything publicly because that's MLF. But they're not doing anything. Okay? They have no problem with their cameraman evidently doing what their cameraman is accused of doing, or they have discovered that cameraman did not do what was stated. So what you potentially have is a Bass Pro Tour angler embellishing in something to a Bass Elite Series angler, potentially, and then that Bass Elite Series angler goes and runs with it to Bass. Okay? Or you've got a Bass Elite angler who makes all this shit up. Because MLF has not found anything to justify or warrant the claims being made by the Bass Elite angler. Meaning, they have not been able to find any information to substantiate that a cameraman provided anybody with any waypoints or any fishing locations or any documentation. So, if that's the case, then the Bass Elite Series angler had no basis for doing for calling Bass. He had no information except hearsay, right? So there's no facts or evidence. And Bass solely relied on a truth verification test to DQ someone this close in the top 15 of the Angler of the Year race and the Rookie of the Year race. Okay? That's pretty bad. So where we are now? Well, where we are today is JT Thompkins, and I give him a ton of credibility, okay? Because he's been adamant about his innocence. He hasn't just gone away, tucked his head between his legs, and freaking run off and hidden. He hasn't. He spent his own money, traveled back to New York, hired a independent certified polygrapher to test him again. Okay? And by now you guys know he passed. So what does that mean? Well, for JT it means everything. And for me it means everything. Like, because let's be honest with you. Let's be honest. If you had to rank the transparency and the trustability of Bass and MLF a year ago, you would have Bass up here and MLF here. Okay? If you ranked right now the credibility and the transparency of Bass and Major League Fishing, it'd be like this. Bass has managed to cede all of the ground that it has gained against MLF this year. Everybody knows MLF has been an organization in kind of turmoil. The anglers have been upset. It's been an absolute shit show for a year. Everybody knows that. Every fan knows that. Okay, this isn't new. Okay, right? I love MLF, I love bass. I love professional bass fishing. I love to follow it as a fan, but that's just the reality. The perception is it's been a shit show, okay? With all the DQs and all the problems and all the upheaval ever since, everything, okay? But now Bass is experiencing it. This is transformational stuff. Like, wait, what, Bass? This organization? Ray Scott's organization? Like, what the hell is happening? Well, this shit's happening. JT is just an example of Bass not getting out of its own way. They did not have any verifiable evidence at all. They didn't. Because MLF and the Bass Pro Tour angler have now stated that the evidence doesn't exist, that it didn't happen. So then you took hearsay from an angler with no investigation, none. That's what's not being told to you. Bass did not do an investigation. Bass launched directly into polygraphing JT. They didn't launch an investigation first. Why is that? Now some will argue because, well, Jay, it was the last event of the year and there was so much on the line. Exactly. They have tarnished, whether or not you believe that's true or not from an intentionality standpoint, they have tarnished this rookie's reputation. From what I understand, he had lost a sponsorship over this. And lo and behold, he passes a polygraph. So people say, oh, well, Jay, the only polygraph that matters is the one that was taken on Friday by Bass. Why? Why is that the only polygraph that matters? You don't even know who gave it. You don't even know how it was administered. You don't even know the conditions in which it was administered, when it was administered, right? Any of those things. You don't know any of that. All we know, based on the August 16th, 2024, is that of all the questions asked, and we don't really know how many, he failed 2 questions. And on those 2 questions, they removed him from the St. Lawrence River event. Well, now we come to find out that a certified polygrapher with incredible experience and well-known reputation, spanning multiple sports, by the way, not just sports, but also criminal, has stated, and you can go to JT Thompkins fishing Facebook page, and you can see the video from the actual person who gave JT the polygraph, okay? The certified person who gave him the polygraph. Where is Bass's certified person? Who administered the polygraph for Bass? Why are they not out defending their test? Right? Just saying. That's where we stand. MLF, nothing to see here. Okay? As far as they're concerned. Now, this has been happening for a while now in MLF. Okay? This isn't new. The people have been talking about cameramen not only fishing MLF events, by the way, in the same areas in which they've been on a boat with a camera. MLF doesn't seem to have a problem with that. Do you? I mean, if you're in that event, do you have a problem with that? That if you're fishing a Toyota Series event or you're fishing a BFL event, you're up against the guy who was in the camera with a top 5, maybe he was the cameraman for Jacob Wheeler, right? And then 2 months later, there's an event on that same body of water, and that cameraman's fishing with Toyota or fishing with BFL or fishing whatever, and he had that experience with some of these top-to-top anglers in the world, and he gets to freaking have that information. He doesn't have an unfair advantage? Come on, man. Like, seriously, this is a problem. And it will continue to be a problem as long as fans like you and me allow it to be pushed under the rug. JT Kennedy said it. They don't talk about the things that they should be talking about. Clean the sport up, right? That's what really has to happen. There has to be a organized effort to make things transparent and consistent across the board. Not a standard for these guys because they've been in the MLF or Bass Elite Series for 10 years or more, and then a standard for the rookies. And then how many times have the rookies, the Bass Elite Series in 2024 been polygraphed? And why? Why is this class, why has Bass paid so much attention to this class in terms of issues? Why? I mean, fans have to take a step back and look at the rationale as to why this is happening and why it continues to happen. As the Bass Elite Series age out and the MLF Bass Pro Tour veteran anglers, as they age out, okay, and the new crop of anglers come in, Bass and MLF need to solve this, and they need to solve it in a hurry. And their attempts to solve it with the information rule, extending it to January 1st, just created more issues. Right? Like, again, I don't understand. Someone could have to explain to me how extending the information rule to January 1st for everybody was unfair. Everybody has an opportunity to buy waypoints if you're going to do that, if that's who you are, and you don't have any integrity and you don't respect the sport, and you're only going out there to cash a check, and that's how you're looking at it, is this is a way to cash a check. It's not has anything to do with the integrity of the sport. Those guys are going to do that. Okay? But everybody has that opportunity to gain information, to talk to guys, to get information off the internet, to whatever, everybody has the same opportunity. Now, some are going to be better than others, right? Is that the problem? But isn't that the way it is on the water? Aren't some better than others on the water? So how do you make a level playing field, right? And so then they go all the way back to reverting back to what it was before, sending the signal that the inmates run the asylum, because of all the bitching and moaning that happened when they came out with that change, right? And so that's where we are. It's frustrating. I'm sure you can hear it in my voice. Like, I'm like, it just baffles me. Like, the consistently inconsistent. That's how I would describe professional bass fishing today. Consistently inconsistent from an organizational perspective. Okay? Now, the people on the inside can't talk like me. People on the inside can't give interviews, can't come on. They're not, and they're going on podcasts that are going to get softball questions. I mean, that's just that reality, okay? Which is great, because some information does come out, like the information about the MLF, the information about the Bass Pro Tour angler, and the fact that he is walking away from all of this and back and saying, no, that didn't happen. No, I have no idea what that is about. That never took place. Well, if that never took place, and the angler in the Bass Elite Series claims that it did take place, then that angler needs to be suspended from Bass for 1 year, because he caused detrimental harm to another angler in JT Thompkins. Again, if Bass can't substantiate their own Elite Series anglers' claims that were the catalyst to administer a polygraph, and they're unwilling to do that, what does that say about Bass? Like, anybody, rookie class, next year, just file protests against people. Just protest. Protest them to death, because that's what they're saying. All you have to do is raise suspicion. We have seen so many things and so many events in the last 2 or 3 years. Can you imagine how many protests there would be if the standard was simply suspicion? And that's a shame, Bass. It really is. But again, you are taking 1 step forward, 2 steps backward. And now the game is pretty much, for most fans that you talk to, they're one and the same. Bass is no longer up here and MLF down here. They're both about the same in terms of transparency, integrity, ethics, and respect. That's where this goes to the heart of in the JT Thompkins. And Bass can't make it right. What can they do? He probably had a shot at finishing in the top 5. And maybe, just maybe, had he not gotten DQ'd, we wouldn't have had the Johnston incident with Robert G. We may not have had that, because JT may have been on that ledge because he was there on day 1. Okay? So, again, he finished 7th on the St. Lawrence River in 2023. He knew that area. He fished that area. It's not Chris Johnston's area. Hundreds of anglers have fished that area in tournaments for years. Okay? So who's to say what would have happened? I could say one thing. I don't think Chris Johnston wins the St. Lawrence event if JT Thompkins doesn't get disqualified, because I guarantee you that had he not gotten disqualified, Trey McKinney would have been there, Robert G would have been there, JT Thompkins would have been there, 2 other rookies would have been in that area by day 3. Okay? When Chris Johnson comes rolling in there, there may not even have been a spot for him to get in there next to freaking Robert G. Okay? I'm just saying. Just speculating. Just speculating. But again, that's where we stand. JT Thompkins cleared to many of us in a recent second authentic, verifiable polygraph. Not a truth certification test. An actual polygraph comes back clean. So anyone else who wants to keep with this whole cheater thing with JT Thompkins better put an asterisk next to this one, because apparently B.A.S.S got this one wrong. And I'm interested to see what they're going to do about it with the other angler. The angler who supposedly got information from MLF in order to be the catalyst to start all this stuff. What's going to happen to him? Because to me, he's lost all credibility now. Okay? And so some action has to be taken against him, some form or another. All right, guys.